What's up, Cerebral Football fans? My name is Stephen Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. And today's topic, we're talking about the shakeup at the linebacking core. For some of us, I saw some of the comments that's floating around there on Twitter. Some people felt a little caught off guard by the news of Devin White and then, injury, then the subsequent move that, Nakobe Dean is not only going to be the middle linebacker, the Mike linebacker for the defense for week one, but had actually earned the job, had won the job. A lot of people kind of felt caught off guard because, truthfully said, when you followed the offseason, you followed camp, you followed, the flow of preseason games, I can see why that would lend to some confusion because the only person who was always taking first team snaps was Devin White. And then on top of that, he didn't play that much during the preseasons, which would lead you to, suspect that more than likely he had solidified himself as a starter. So I can see why that might be a little confusing. The way I look at it, guys, is I ain't got no control over that kind of stuff, man. I mean, there's no point in dwelling about things that I just have absolutely no control over. Like, makes no sense to dwell over that. I think the silver lining here is that Nakobe Dean actually had to earn his spot and did earn it. The coaching staff did not just give a spot to Nakobe Dean this time around. He was heavily critiqued. I wouldn't say criticized. I think it was more of a critique. I think, Vic Fangio was critiquing him and being honest. I think he was just being very honest in his assessment to say Nakobe Dean did a lot of special things in college. We have not seen some of that stuff real life yet in the NFL yet. A lot of potential, a lot of talent, not a lot of elite production yet. So, Vic was just being honest about it. He had to go out there and earn it. I will say this to start this off before we start getting into the analysis, guys. I got some analysis lined up for you. We're going to analyze what would make a successful season, in my opinion, from the linebacker position. But I'll say this, I would not give up quite yet on Devin White being a part of the defense, just because I think that there are some things schematically when you look at the construct of this roster and the ways that Vic will probably get creative in creating pressure, right? So he may not bring an overloaded blitz as much as we want to see, right? I mean, this is not going to be, your late Jim Johnson type defenses where you got these overloaded blitzes coming out of zone coverages behind it. You're not going to get that, okay? You're not going to get the Buddy Ryan, 46 defense to where you're playing bump and run on the outside and you're hurrying everything up around the line of scrimmage. You're not getting that. It's not the type of defense you're going to get here. You're not going to get, there's quite a few people. Greg Williams, the guy that I always respected the way that he played defense. But to be fair, Greg Williams has kind of a shaky history when you get into when you need him the most in playoff games and stuff. But with that said, it's not going to be that type of aggressive nature to the defense. But I do think there's going to be some confusion. That's what he's trying to create. He wants to create confusion. And that's when I say I wouldn't necessarily count out Devin White still having an impact on the defense, because the bottom line is that Nakobe Dean was a really good rusher in college from the linebacker spot. Devin White has proven to be a really good rusher at the professional level at the linebacker spot. Zach Bond is a converted edge from the college level, right? He was an edge at Wisconsin. He was a guy that showed late in the season last year with New Orleans that he can do it at the NFL level. So like when I see these kind of things and I'm taking the totality of the roster into consideration, right? To where I got a guy like Brandon Graham, who is probably going to get a lot of snaps, but has some versatility, right? Brandon Graham can be kicked inside with hands in the dirt to give you a pass rush, okay? Josh Sweat can be kicked inside with his hands in the dirt to give you a pass rush. Those two guys do not necessarily need to be overhanged on the defense or played up in the A and B gap, kind of off ball, still about a yard and a half. Think of the old school rules from linebackers where they come up and threaten the A and B gaps about a yard and a half off of the line of scrimmage, if you will. Those guys, they're more hand in the dirt, like they can give you stuff. So they're not going to necessarily always have to be overhanged, stood up in the A and B gaps like that, right? But the guys that can give you that, you got to look at it, right? I mean, you got Bryce Huff, he can do that. You got guys like Nolan Smith who can do that. You got guys like Jalix Hunt, the young guy, who can do that. Patrick Johnson can do that, right? I mean, there are guys on this roster that I do think fit that mold. Zach Bond fits that mold. I think Devin White fits that mold. I think Nakobe Dean fits that role. So if you're working off of replacement blitzes, if you follow my logic here, if you're working off a replacement blitz, which is not truly a blitz, if you're still only sending 4 guys, it's not really a blitz because you're not sending anyone extra. But it's they call them, it's referred to as a replacement blitz. So you kick, one of your edges out into the flats, right? So you can lighten the area that needs to be covered by the rest of the under defense. Well, if you kick a guy out to the flats, and you do that, then you could bring your nickel. Your nickel can come on a blitz, right? Your nickel corner can come on a blitz. One of your linebackers can come on a blitz. So that's when you can utilize the likes of guys like Zach Bond and I think Devin White. I think guys like, if they got creative, I'm not going to say they're going to do this because they should have done it last year, but Nolan Smith, where you're not just overhanging him, you're playing him in the A gap and the B gap, standing up a yard and a half off and using that athleticism to threaten guys who come up slower out of their stances, especially when you got a guy like Jalen Carter who's on the opposite side of the line. And he's already going to be a threat and a problem. If you can utilize some of the athleticism of guys like that on the opposite side of Jalen Carter, I do think it makes things tough on the blocking scheme a little bit, to be quite honest. I wouldn't be shocked if you don't, we could talk about percentages, guys. I don't know how comfortable I am with projecting a percentage of snaps you would see these type of looks on, but occasions where you have a Zach Bond because you want more of a pass rush. A Zach Bond who's primarily playing off ball for you, but you use them in these snaps. They did it with Kaiser White, by the way, with Jonathan Gannon, where you overhang a Zach Bond. Now that you have Zach Bond being overhang, now you can play, a 4-2-5 structure. So you're overhanging Zach Bond. He's one of your overhangs. Maybe you got Joshua Sweat with his hand in the dirt or somebody else with their hand in the dirt. So you have a 3-man line with a guy that's like kind of your jack linebacker who's being overhanged on the defense. Now you got 2 stack linebackers behind him, which could be Nakobe Dean, which could be, guys like that. Nakobe Dean, Devin White, Zach Bond could be basically dropping into the flats on that play and confusing your eyes. Now you got, Nakobe Dean, or you've got, Devin White coming. Like, you could do things like that. That's what I'm saying. So I wouldn't necessarily completely discount it yet. I mean, while he's still on the roster, you got to find a use, right? I mean, now when he's off the roster, that's a different story, right? I mean, obviously if this guy just completely keeps being put as being an inactive, when I say off the roster, I don't necessarily mean cut or traded. I mean, like, where he's just inactive, where he's just not on game days. Like, then, yeah, now, when you get consecutive weeks of that, something's kind of up a little bit. But I wouldn't necessarily completely discount him still having a role within the team. I know they tried to trade him. There were some rumors that, I don't know if they were actively trying to trade him or if they were listening to offers. I think that sometimes things like that can get blown a little out of proportion. With that said, I mean, if you got him on the roster and you're keeping him on active on game days, that's the kind of person, like, you got to find a report from. I don't know how many snaps he would be impacting it. I don't know. You know what I mean? But he's not a special teams player. He's not going to impact your special teams play. Now, you can make the argument that with the new kickoff rules, linebackers are really important to special teams right now. Linebackers and tight ends probably in particular can really play an impactful role in terms of, the coverages now, and definitely in your blocking schemes for the kickoffs. But with that said, man, like, I don't see him as like a big special teams player. Like, Jeremiah Trotter, Nakobe Dean, even Zach Bond, like, Oren Burks is a great special teams player. Ben Van Sumeren, all those dudes are really good special teams players. You get my point here, guys. Like, he's not hanging on this team because of special teams prowess. All right. Let me get into a little bit of evaluation. I want to break down the way that I evaluate productivity from the linebacker spot and give you guys a little bit of insight of how I see it. I think the very first thing you're looking at when you're evaluating linebackers is I want to know early impact in games. Okay. I want to see what you do in the first quarter of games. Okay. I think that's a really good way of knowing if you got a dude who's setting the tone, if they're being impactful, and just kind of looking. And I'm looking at solo tackles in particular. I'm not discounting total tackles, guys. So if you go filter and you're looking at total tackles, which includes the assisted tackles, I'm not shading you. It's just, personally, I like to see the solo tackles. So one of the first things I looked at is I wanted to see, if I look at the first quarter of the 2023 season, right? First quarter of games, like, who led in solo tackles? Like, who were those dudes that were standing out? One name is Alex Anzalon, however you say his name, the young man from Detroit. Okay. Alex Singleton was second. Justin Reed was third. Justin Reed's a safety, guys. Cameron Bynum was fourth. Fred Warner, Foyesade Alakan, a guy that I was pretty high on a couple of years ago. I gave you Alakan's name. I gave you Kaiser White's name that season. I told you both of those guys would be really good fits for the Eagles. They ended up making one of those signings, and he did play dividends. He was pretty dang good for us, right? Kyle Hamilton, David Long, Caden Ellis. Okay, Caden Ellis is the brother of Noah Ellis. Also, Christian Ellis' brother as well. Levante David, Dre Greenlaw, J.O.K., Deshaun Elliott, a guy that a lot of us were kind of high on from the safety position, we thought would be a good fit here in Philly. Patrick Queen, E.J. Speed, Drew Tranquil, Richie Grant, Frankie Louvu, Quincy Williams, Terrell Bernard, just the names that are popping up, guys, that I'm reading from you. You can see my point really quickly. Like some of those names I just listed for you are some of like the dudes, right? Those are some of the guys in this league. Like you can see some of those names pop off right away. And even underrated guys like Alex Anzalone, underrated guy. Alex Singleton. We know Alex Singleton's underrated, man. Foye Said Alakan, underrated player. Caden Elise, another underrated player. He played with New Orleans for a while, by the way. And then we see some of the dogs in this league. You know, we know Justin Reed's a good player. We know Fred Warner is a dog in this league. We know Levante David is a dog in this league. Dre Greenlaw is a dog in this league. JOK, I would put underneath the underrated a little bit. I think people underrate him a little bit. Patrick Queen is a dog in this league, right? Drew Tranquil, underrated in this league. Frankie Louvu, I would say kind of he's in that dog category for me, guys. Like you can see quickly the names that are popping up. It tells you something, right? That knowing how players are impacting the game in the first quarter of games tells me a lot about production. Like that's what I'm indicating here, guys, is about Nakobe Dean. When I look back 4 to 6 games, you know, obviously we have a week 5 bye, but when I look in that first quarter range of the season, first 4 or 5 games of the season, I should see certain names popping up. And one of those names should be Nakobe Dean when I'm filtering by first quarter production. Nakobe Dean needs to be popping up, man. Like definitely needs to be popping up in the listing of that kind of stuff. Some other things I like to look at, guys, in terms of judging production and seeing kind of like where these guys are in terms of, you know, impact inside of games. Totality of the game, all 4 quarters. Show me what you do on first and second down. I want to know what you do, especially from the linebacker spot, on first and second down. All right. So when I go look at this, here are the names that pop up on first and second down on the listing. Are y'all ready? Zaire Franklin, Foye Said Alakan, Alex Singleton, Quincy Williams, Bobby Okereke, Levante David, TJ Edwards, Alex Anzalone, Bobby Wagner, Cameron Bynum, Roquan Smith, Caden Ellis, Daxton Hill, Fred Warner, Jesse Bates III, CJ Mosley, Aziz Al-Shahir, Logan Wilson, Terrell Bernard, Derwin James. Okay, first and second down throughout all corners. Who has the most solo tackles? Those are your names, guys. Once again, you can see the mixing in of how many dogs are in that listing. To me, you want to know if the production is going to be good? Show me what they're doing in the first quarter. Show me what they're doing on early downs. It's a really, really good way of knowing if these dudes are truly having an impact on the game. And the last point I'll make about judging production, like, you know, expectations here for a productive season from Nakobe Dean in particular. And I know you guys, you can go, well, we just look at grading, you know, let these guys that have nothing but time on their hands and are grading tape and are coming together. Like we can just let them do that job, Steve. I hear you. I still like to know numbers, guys. I like to know the numbers. I like to know what's going on, actually. I like to know individual statistics, and I like to weight things the way that I think they're important. If I do grading from like PFF, yes, it's impartial, but it may not be weighted the same way that I see the game. That's the issue I have with sites like PFF. Even like something is like, you know, as good as QBR, you know, you're using your QB ratings, your QBR, right? Using passer ratings. There's still a little subjectivity to that, guys, in a way that they're weighting things. It's still subjective. Goal line. I'm looking from my opponent's 19 to my opponent's 1. So I'm looking at red zone and goal line production. Solo tackles. Who you got? Who is making plays here? And this one, obviously, you're going to get some interior defensive linemen start to pop up on this list here. Jalani Tavi, I don't know how you say his name, guys. Sorry. Levante David, Foye Said Alakan, Cody Barton, Bobby Wagner, Quandre Diggs. Look at Kavon Wallace up there. All right. I'm proud of Kavon Wallace, man. Kavon did a really good job of recovering his career, man. Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, Alex Singleton, Antone Winfield Jr., Bobby Okereke, Marquise Bell, Patrick Queen, Kaiser White, Damone Clark from the Cowboys, Kayshawn Nixon, Mike Hilton, Jalen Thompson, Kyle Duggar. I'm not saying he's got to be top 20 in every single one of those categories or even top 25, top 30-ish in every one of those categories. I'm saying when I look at the top 50 listing, okay, when I'm looking at the top 50 players, if I got a young man like Nakobe Dean, who's my starting Mike linebacker, who's the green dot of play calling, who's going to be in there for pretty much the vast majority of plays, pretty much all plays, if healthy, right? Through a 17-game course of a season, maybe he gets to sit a game, right? Maybe they do take him out for a game because at the end of the year, you're resting up, right? I should see top 50 performances on first quarter production, first and second down production, and in that red zone and goal line situations. I should see production that makes sense for a guy that has this type of role. That's something that we've been missing. TJ Edwards and Kaiser White gave us, that little sample size of like really good linebacker play. I'm not going to call it elite. I don't think we were, even though I think TJ Edwards can be argued to be one of the elite guys at that position right now. I don't necessarily think that our play in 22 from the linebacker spot was elite, but I do think it was very good to exceptional. It was in a place we haven't been in a while, right? The last time I saw really adequate linebacker play to that level came in the 2017 season. And that 2017 season, we still dealt with a ton of injuries and we had really good depth. The depth saved our butts on the 2017 season, to be honest. But we also put a lot of resources into the linebacker position during 2017. And, that helped us. To be quite honest, like the 2 seasons we reached the Super Bowl, I don't think it's a coinky dink that we had relatively good linebacker play. I don't think that's a coinky dink, guys. I think that our front office needs to be a little bit more diligent about when they've had success and why they've had the success. Because I do think sometimes they kind of miss the forest for the trees. I get there's an evaluation. I get there's a money aspect to this. You still got to be smart in the decisions you make there, right? It doesn't mean that you can just completely devalue the position. And I do think that Howie's coming around now to that realization that we've gone too far in one direction. We got to start righting the ship a little bit at linebacker and in some other spots. Like, running backs, one that we saw recently, with, spending the money we spent this offseason there. Like, it does seem like Howie's kind of getting it a little bit more. Like, okay, like we spearheaded this movement. We were initially correct about it, but now this thing is kind of going a little too far. We've gone a little too far to one side, and now we need to bring it back. We need to bring it back just a tad, because when we look at when we have been our most successful, it is when we have been very, very healthy and talented at the linebacker spot. Now, you never forsake, your pass rush. You never forsake interior D-line play. You never forsake your secondary for linebacker play. That's not what I'm saying. However, I do think that most of you would agree with me. We've gone too far to one side recently. So hopefully Nakobe Dean kind of starts helping that momentum go back in the right way. I don't know what Zach Bond is. And like I said, guys, it's really hard to judge this until we get tape, because I'm not solidified 100% in what I believe each guy's role is. I don't know how they see Zach Bond. I do think there is some reason to suspect that they do see Zach Bond and that Andrew Van Ginkel role. Something I brought up to you guys the minute we signed him. I said, I wonder if this is the Van Ginkel role. I think the thing we have to remember, though, is that Van Ginkel primarily did play as an off-ball linebacker until injuries, kind of stacked up against, Miami's roster. Then they had to play him down as a pass rusher, an edge rusher, essentially. We'll have to see kind of like, did Vic learn something from that and he's not going to wait for injuries? Is Zach Bond part of the equation on a certain limited basis in terms of snaps? How are they going to resolve some of this pass rush stuff, guys? Because I do think that our pass rush is going to have to be a little bit more scripted than it's been in the past. I thought there was a little period of time when we had, guys like Javon Hargrave, and you had guys like Josh Sweat, and you had Hassan Reddick, you had Fletch, you had during the end of the season, and Ndamukong Suh, like those dudes could just win one-on-one matchups. It just didn't require a lot of scheme to get home. These dudes were just better. They were just better than what was in front of them. So, now that you got guys I still think are really good. Jalen Carter is going to be a dog. I definitely think that as a pass rusher, if we're just judging his ability to get a pass rush home, I definitely think that Bryce Huff is going to be quite good at that. I think that Josh Sweat is respectable. I don't think he's like a top tier guy anymore. I don't think you can put him in that, top 25, 30 discussion anymore. I think he's kind of on the back end of that stuff now, but I still think he's a respectable edge rusher. I still think he can get you 7-8 sacks in a season. But I do think you're going to have to be more scripted this time around, guys. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more scripted with the pass rush this time around. I think you're going to see a little bit more of those replacement blitzes and stuff. I think you're going to see some stuff coming in from the secondary. I do think you're going to see a little bit different. And we even saw a little bit last year, to be quite honest. If we're going to be real honest about 2023 and Sean Desai had a few games where you saw it coming from multiple angles, right, in terms of the blitz. we had a couple of really big games from our linebackers in terms of being able to bring blitzes and things like that. Like, so, I mean, we already saw a little bit of the changing of the guard there. I think you're going to see it. I think you got the mastermind. You got the guy who made this entire scheme. Him coming in and plugging in now, I think is going to be a little different. I think the feel is going to be different to how we get pass rushes home. And I do see a lot of concern from you guys in the community. I get that question quite a bit about our ability to get a pass rush. And if I'm concerned about it, like, yeah, I mean, because the talent isn't as good as it was just a couple of years ago. Like from top to bottom, it's not, Now, I will say that I think we are a much better run defense, even though I still worry about us being able to stop it with a 4-man front. Yeah, I love Javon Hargrave, but that dude couldn't stop the run to save his life. But yeah, I think that's one of the downsides to that is like you got better in terms of being able to defend the run. You detract that a little bit in terms of your ability to get a pass rush. So it's going to come down to how much they can generate pressure from unexpected places, really. All right, guys, what's up, man? How you doing, Deshae? How you doing, buddy? Scoob, what's good, Scoob? Yo, what's up, Drew? How you doing, buddy? I don't believe the reports, and you're right, not in our control. Yeah, it's just not like I'm not going to sit here and like lose sleep over this stuff. Like it's not in my control. I ain't got no control over who they play. Like I may have a difference of opinion with them about things, but ultimately you got to go out there and battle with whoever they throw out there on the field. Whoever your starting 22 is, and then if you expand it out to like probably the 30 some guys that are going to contribute overall, you know what I mean? Like you just got to go to war with what you got. I mean, it is what it is. Do you think Nolan can be better at off-ball linebacker? I don't know, to be honest. Scoob, I don't know what his experience is in terms of doing that. I think he's got the athletic profile for it. I think he's very good lateral mover. I think he's very sudden. I think he's strong, especially for his size. I think he's definitely a stronger guy for his size. And we even saw that in college, that even though he was really undersized, he was a really good run defender, actually. It's kind of one of the sneaky things about Nolan Smith that, I felt like his pass rush ability was fully off of potential and maybe a little overhyped, but his ability to stop the run and to really set an edge, I thought was really undervalued coming out of college. I thought he was pretty dang good at doing that, actually. Now, I got the concerns, is that college is a little different from the pros. And when you're 230 something, like, yeah, you got to be a little concerned about a guard pulling you out there and just depleting you. Sure. But I definitely thought that he was a little underrated in terms of his run prowess, his ability to play the run. What's up, Cal Bunny? How you doing, buddy? Sorry, guys, it's not letting me. I think I locked up the chat for a second. What's up, Cal Bunny? How you doing, buddy? Dad says Dean season. Nolan Smith is athletic enough, but needs to be coached up. Doesn't seem like that isn't the plan. Yeah, he's definitely going to get snaps. I mean, we'll see how that works its way out. I agree, Gates. I felt they should move Smith around more often and let him attack. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do, man. That's what I would do. Yeah, that's definitely what I would do. 4th string on Dallas and still a first-round exit from the playoffs. Donnie Forrest said, I got a feeling Quinyon Mitchell is going to be a dog this year. I got us beating the Packers 34-27. Yeah, Quinyon's a good player. I mean, I think you heard Vic speak pretty highly of him. I mean, well, Vic's man of very little words, but his yes. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could see that he's got some confidence there. He's definitely got some confidence here. Dean beat out Devin White here. From what I heard, whether Dean White was healthy or not, Dean would be starting. That's very encouraging. Yo, what's up, Gate City? What's up, Antonio? How you doing, buddy? Says, Coach, what is a big deal with White? Fans didn't want him when we got him, and now he is not playing. The world is coming to an end. I wanted to see a healthy Dean. Yeah, I don't know, Antonio. I mean, I liked the signing when they originally made it. I mean, he was a veteran guy with something to prove. He was a young vet, he's not like a 30-year-old guy, but he was a younger veteran guy who had some experience in the league, and I thought had a ton of potential and a ton to prove. But I mean, so was Nakobe Dean. Wasn't a veteran in the league, but he was a young guy with a lot to prove and a lot of potential. Like, I don't know, man. I look at it like this, Antonio. I'm just going to let things play out. We'll see how it plays out. Like, I think people are jumping ship a little too fast on the situation. Like, I would just let it play out. I mean, see how these guys play inside of games. Let's see what Vic can do. With adequate coaching, things can look a lot different. Fort says he's got 33, 28 birds. Tribble said Zach Bond looked really good in preseason in terms of technique. Raphael said, couldn't agree more. Appreciate you, buddy. Donnie said, what do you think of Thomas Booker? Thomas Booker the fourth, I believe is his name, right, Donnie? Athletically gifted. Got was a guy who came here with a little bit of a rep, even last year when we brought him on. I believe we got him from the Texans, and I think the Texans actually liked him a lot. I think they were working to try to develop him as well, but that's the problem is that when you put a guy in the practice squad and you speak highly of him, other coaches and scouts got ears. You know what I mean? And I think it was just one of those ones where we snuck one. We snuck one past them. I think I'm a little concerned with him playing the nose, Donnie. I do think there's different ways to play the nose, and that's what I'm waiting to see. I definitely think that if you're going to play like a tilted nose, if you're going to play a tilted front, or where you're going to have a lot of, essentially loopers and things like that in terms of like being able to like come around and move your defensive line around, then yeah, like if you're going to use a stunt-based front, I think Thomas Booker could be effective in that role. If he's just pass rushing from a 2-eye spot, where you got a 4-man rush, so one dude's in a 2-eye, which is technically still in the nose. The other guy's in a 3 technique. It's just inside shoulder versus outside shoulder. I'm not overly concerned there, to be quite honest. But it's when he's heads up over a tackle and someone's doubling to him and it's a run play. That one concerns me a little bit. It concerns me a little bit because he's a little undersized for that role. Speedy Eagle, what's up, buddy? He says, what is up? Long time. What do you think of this defense this year? Tremendously talented, tremendously young. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson is going to help this defense out a lot. Just from the emotional standpoint, like having a guy that the rah-rah guy, like people always say they don't want the rah-rah guy until they don't have the rah-rah guy. And then they immediately want the rah-rah guy back. CJ Gardner-Johnson's, he's that vocal guy. I think he's the dude that can keep guys locked into games, can keep the spirit and the energy up, man. I think we were missing that last year. I think we got a few talkers on the team, We've heard them say that, like, despite what people's viewpoint is about Jordan Davis, he is a leader and he's a talker. Jordan Davis be out there talking it. We know that Brandon Graham's going to talk it all game long to the offensive line. I think Darius Slay will mix it up a little bit with the words. So, I mean, I think there's going to be a little bit of energy. Quinyon was out there picking fights with AJ during camp. And like, I do think that there's going to be a little bit more energy defensively, Speedy Eagle. I can't say the level of improvement yet. I mean, there's no tape to judge yet. It's right now it's all, it's speculation. It's all speculation and based upon potential. And I do think the potential is there. I think we got a lot of young guys in the secondary that I'm excited to see in certain roles. We'll see. I mean, we'll definitely see. We'll see if it holds up once we get in season. We got a couple of pretty tough tests to begin with. I think that Atlanta game is going to be harder than people think. I'm not a huge fan of Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins is a way better quarterback than what Atlanta's had the last couple of years. Like now you got a guy who can actually get the ball into some weapons. Now we've had a pretty good run against Kirk Cousins recently. Like we basically owned him in Minnesota for the last couple of years. So, we'll see. True Will said affecting the quarterback this year will be more than just my guy is stronger or quicker than your guy. Exactly, True Will. In my opinion, it's going to be the team scheming things up to affect the quarterback. I think it's the feeling I get too, is that you're going to see a little bit more game planning around that, right? I mean, I still think, a pressure is a pressure no matter how you get there. But yeah, I definitely think you're going to see a little bit more of those replacement type blitzes. My guy, Mac, what's up, buddy? I apologize, man. I just noticed the super chat, buddy. Said the pass rush is key. The Eagles 38, Packers 24. Mac with the $1.99 super chat and the score prediction. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you so much, man. KSF said, I think the Devin White news is BS. He's been on first team reps with Bond all preseason. More of this Eagles slander. I don't know. I wouldn't count out him still having a role. Like perhaps Nakobe Dean, that maybe they evaluate the situation and they just like Nakobe Dean more in that spot. But I wouldn't rule out Devin White still having an impact on the defense. I think people are giving up on that as long as if he's rostered. Now, obviously, if he's cut or traded, come on, then we know everything changes. But as long as he's rostered, as long as he's not being inactive for consecutive weeks, then I think something's kind of up there. But I mean, if he's being rostered as one of your active 46, he's not a special teams player. So you're going to have to find a use for him. So I still think he's going to have somewhat of a role. And I don't think it's just going to be purely as a break in case of emergency linebacker. I mean, you already got that in Oren Burks. So, I mean, I think they would find a role there. I think there would be something special coming in with the way that they're going to use Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean and Devin White together. I think there would be some kind of something down the line is coming, I would think, if that's the case. We got to see if that's the case, guys. We need tape and we need actual game. We need tape of the actual game, I should say. Brandon, what's good, buddy? Says Nolan Smith is pretty much a younger Brandon Graham. Yeah, people aren't loving him right now. Matt came in with a 38-24. Cameron said if Dean beat out Devin White, that would be kind of ironic because Devin White was talking it, saying move over. Yeah, it is what it is, Cameron. They jump ship on everything. Yeah, it doesn't take much. That's trouble for some of them. I don't think we dropping 38 Green Bay. It's going to be a close mid-scoring game. What's up, Cody? How you doing, buddy? Mac, I appreciate it, buddy. Matt coming in with another $4.99 super chat says, I don't believe the Devin White slander. He will be the starter for the home opener. You don't have a man take first team snaps just to trade him. We'll see. You could be right, Mac. I mean, we'll see. Like I said, I don't think that this necessarily means he doesn't have a role on the team. I definitely think there could still be a role for him on the team. Cameron said, do you think they should use Nolan Smith like LSU uses Harold Perkins? Huh. I like the idea of using Nolan Smith in a way that gets him matched up where he's got a clear athletic advantage over another player. That's what I like him as, especially as a pass rusher. I do think that they should have been using him more a yard and a half off the line of scrimmage, and there's A and B gaps, Cameron. You saw the one sack that he got that was like, he got two of them. One of them, the guy overset to the outside, not realizing he had help, and just they completely knocked Nolan Smith right. Give Nolan Smith credit because he kept body control, but knocked him right into an actual pass rush lane. With that said, the other sack he had, you saw him kind of split out there. And then, at the snap, now he's coming from outside at depth. And, that kind of played a role in it there. So I like the idea of moving him all around the field. Like, of course, he's going to have to overhang and rush as a pass rusher as an overhang more than he does anything else. But I still think you should use him as a weapon. If CJ isn't a captain, he's definitely a lieutenant. I like that saying, KSF. That's funny, man. Your team needs to have an attitude. Exactly. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get from CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson gives you that attitude. He gives you that spirit, right? Gives you that fight, man. There were times like down the stretch, Trill Will, that we didn't have fight, bro. No matter what people want to say, they want to know what happened. The team didn't want to fight no more. That's what happened. They gave up. I like when Slay was saying about Trotter, he's doing it for daddy. Eagles fans, I'm concerned about the middle of the field defense again. It's going to be a little different this year, Eagles fan. You got to keep in mind that while we will, like early on in games, Eagle fan, you're going to see some quarter stuff. They're going to play some form of quarters, but you will start getting rotations. And once adjustments come in, you're going to get those rotations into give you a quarters look. It's going to convert into a cover 3 or a cover 9, just depend, how they're going to use their ripper Liz, how they're going to move the box basically with their safeties. You'll probably see some cover 6. I mean, Vic, when he was in Chicago, used a ton of cover 6, that quarter, half stuff. You're going to see a lot of different looks from Vic. And I do think that he closes off the middle of the field more than some of his predecessors did. His predecessors didn't close the middle of the field off as much. Sorry, Easy. Had to clear my throat there for a second. Being loud and talkative doesn't make you a leader. Charisma, coolness, and strength on the field does. So laugh my ass off. Wait, I meant how they use Perkins in 22 because they don't know what the F they're doing with him now. Yeah. T. Grant said, why are people so confused about Dean beating out White in camp? For weeks, Inside the Birds has been reporting Dean has been the best linebacker since the open practice. I mean, to be fair, T. Grant, a lot of people reported it. I heard John McMullen reported the same exact thing going back quite a few weeks ago, that Dean was really coming on. It was pretty much the best, linebacker of the group right now. I think the reason there's a lot of confusion, T. Grant, is the way that they handled the situation is because they gave Devin White pretty much every single first team snap. And then they barely utilized him in the preseason, all those would give you the indicators that he was going to definitely be one of the 2 starters and be an essential part of it. Then they talked up like his ability to communicate with the green dot and him taking over the green dot play count. So I get why people were confused about it, but it's like we were saying earlier, T Grant. I mean, we don't control these decisions. Like, it's just no point of fretting about it. Like, I mean, if Nakobe Dean truly beat him out, then Nakobe Dean beat him out. I mean, none you or I can do, right? I mean, all we can do is just hope that we're, the active 22 guys that we put out there that are starting on offense and defense. And then if you expand that out to like probably the 30 guys that are going to have impact on the games, that those key backups are going to play some pretty key roles. Like, hey man, as long as those guys are putting together a winning football team, ain't nothing but spilt milk at the end of the day. And I don't think that, like I was saying earlier, I don't think that this necessarily means that Devin White is not going to have some sort of role on the team. We know it won't be special teams. You can make the argument it doesn't make sense for him to be the break in case of emergency linebacker, because you got a special teams player in Oren Burks who can play that role as well. So, I mean, there's got to be something, not that he's going to be like a high snap count guy, but they got to have something in mind for him here. Like, there's got to be something there. Because if not, then it just doesn't. Then, yeah, I can understand why people are like, well, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. But my thought process is that he probably genuinely did do something to his ankle. I mean, it's not hard to imagine you did something to your ankle. But we'll know. I mean, if you're getting, to the bye week and he's barely active for games, he's not being called up on the 46, then yeah, we know something's going on clearly. Cody said, "What's up with the Saquon Instagram post about signing with another franchise?" Stuff about I didn't have Instagram, wasn't sure what it was about. I don't know, Cody. I heard it as well, but I didn't actually get a chance to like look into it. So I think it might have been something to do with like maybe endorsements or brand or something. But to be honest with you, I didn't see it, man. Max said Green Bay can't stop the run. The minute they bring people in the box, they will get torched. Sorry, guys, I'm scrolling down. All right, let's see what we got here, man. One of the issues with Nolan Smith is him being undersized. It causes him to focus more on his strength rather than where the player is going, causes him to get washed out of plays quick. People lose their mind about first team reps. Rodgers was never CB2. Him and Ringo was always a battle for CB3 or 4. It's a fair point, T. Grant. I will say, though, that, to the point I was just making, though, T. Grant, Rodgers does have a role in the team, though. Isaiah Rodgers has a pretty definitive role in the team. Special teams contributor definitely helps him. Obviously he can, be a guy that factors in the kick return, and it's one of the backup punt returners. And he is slated to be, when they go into nickel and they bounce Quinion inside, Isaiah Rodgers is slated to be the guy who kind of comes in the games and plays outside. We'll see how they do that, because, I mean, he's got an injury to his hand right now. So I'm assuming he's still going to play. But if he doesn't play, it does lead to a very interesting conversation that we could probably have tomorrow before the game about, as we get more clarity potentially about Isaiah Rodgers' injury and whether or not that's going to really have an impact. Because that is kind of a decision of whether you play Kaylee Ringo on the outside and bounce Quinion in nickel, or do you keep Quinion outside and bounce Coop, or do you bring Avante down from the safety spot and put him inside the nickel? I mean, you could even, CJ Garner-Johnson's got experience as a nickel. Like, there's some intrigue around that situation. I know that's not what we're talking about today, T. Grant, but just, because you brought up Rodgers. I mean, I definitely think that's a topic for maybe tomorrow that we could kind of address. Like, I think that's I think it's an interesting situation there that's kind of brewing. Gainwell, still the kick returner. I believe it's Gainwell and Isaiah Rodgers are the kick returners. Rodgers was all pro, so he was cornerback 1 at one point. Donnie said, I'm making some chicken wings and some curly fries. What are you going to eat during the Eagles game? I think we're like-minded on chicken wings. I normally do my openers with like something like chicken wings, or like it'd be like hamburgers and hot dogs. I normally keep the openers simple, because this is a Friday and it's a nighttime game. It doesn't give me like, it affects a little bit of what I can do. I almost got to treat it like it's going to be like a Monday night game essentially. But yeah, I'm thinking about wings myself, man. I probably do some wings. I normally make my own homemade like dipping sauces and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to probably do some wings here as well. I don't know what my sides are going to be yet, man. I know I only got like one day to figure that out, and less than one day, because I really need to hit the store today. But yeah, I ain't really figured out my sides yet, but I know I'm going to do some wings. Cameron said, what's your thoughts on people who say Philly should have taken Branch over Smith? Do you still think he can develop to be a great And if he is great, do you think it's going to be at edge or outside linebacker? Cameron, it's a great question. Look, Branch had a really good rookie year, man. I mean, it's really problematic for a couple reasons, right? Which I know Branch played some safety, especially last, when he was in college. But I also think he played a lot of nickel last year for Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're taking a nickel corner at the back end of the first round, that is a little problematic for value of the position, to be quite honest. With that said, we did just take Cooper DeJean inside of like the top 40 picks, which, you're splitting hairs between 31 and 40. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty much the same damn thing. You know what I mean? So you could just say like, yeah, Gate. Like that's the counter to it. Cameron, I don't have an answer for it. And people are like, well, then how do you explain that one, Gate? Like, come on, bro. It's just next year they turn around and get Cooper DeJean. I will say that sometimes guys can fit one scheme better than another. I'm not saying that Branch would not fit this scheme. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I'd have to see him in the scheme. I got to go back and review his college tape to see how I would feel about it. But I will say that Cooper DeJean in particular is a really good fit as a nickel corner and what Vic Fangio wants to do, because there is a certain toughness you have to play with in this scheme for that. But I will say I thought the evaluation even on Cooper DeJean was as an outside cornerback. Now, obviously, because of the way things have stacked out, it does lead you to a pretty interesting conversation about Cooper DeJean, right? If we're talking about Branch, even Cooper DeJean, like if the future tends to be Kaylee Ringo as say your boundary corner in the future, when Darius Slay retires, they kick Quinyon Mitchell out there to be the field corner. Then what do you do there? Who's your nickel? You're going to let Isaiah Rodgers and Cooper DeJean battle out for nickel. You're going to let Cooper DeJean and, you could say Cooper DeJean and Blankenship fight it out for strong safety. Like, I do think that's the interesting thing about certain players like Brian Branch and guys like Cooper DeJean is their flexibility makes it kind of difficult to project them a little bit. Because, I mean, just Cooper DeJean alone could be a strong safety. I think he could definitely be a boundary corner on the outside. A place where straight line speed is utilized and a guy's ability to have a little bit of arm reach and length and play strong in tight contested spaces, which I think all that describes Cooper DeJean. I do think he fits there as the outside, but also he's tough-minded. He's tough-nosed. He's got zone eyes. He can play as a nickel. So he's got this weird safety inside, outside versatility. And even though I don't think he's the greatest fit as a field corner in the league, I will say what he lacks in hip fluidity. When you watch this tape, and he played a ton of field corner at Iowa, when you watch this tape, what he lacked in hip fluidity, he made up in the instincts. 2 days in a row, previous to this conversation, I talked about that whip route to where he got beat on a whip route. And what he did is he didn't have the fluidity in his hips to get back there in time. So what he did is he just made a veteran play. Instead of trying to come over the top, he went underneath of it, undercut the ball, boom, got it. So, I mean, it's tough, man. 4 or 5 years from now, you'll probably have a very definitive answer. I can say after 1 year, it doesn't look good, but most organizations are always going to value pass rushers over coverage guys. Now, you do get some organizations, Bill Belichick really valued, his secondary. Bill Belichick would build from his secondary up to the pass rush. Bill Belichick felt like if he could keep a secondary, competitive, he can generate a pass rush. I will say that Vic seems to be like where Jim Schwartz is the opposite. Jim Schwartz is definitely like you build it from the front and then you work your way to the back. I think Vic's kind of this nice, weird in-between guy where, I think depending on the talent he has on his team, sometimes he's more, you know what I'm saying? Like they put more resources into what they see in the secondary. And then there are other times where he's definitely clearly playing more towards getting resources inside of this front four. So, I mean, yeah, it's a great question. I'm not too sure I have the answer for it. I think only time can really tell you that. I do think Branch is a damn good player. I mean, they wouldn't have been wrong if they selected Branch, in my opinion. Is it a clear-cut case of Dean or White? Don't know yet. It's hard to say, man. How do you listen to John McMullen if pessimism had a name? The one thing I'll say about John McMullen is why he might be more pessimistic about things than I am. I will say that John has better sources than a lot of these guys do. And John's been around the league enough to where he understands things. I disagree with him on some pretty key things, but John's not like a Cilio who's just Cilio knows better than some of the things he says, but Cilio is purposely trying to rage engage people. I don't enjoy people who try to rage engage. It's not my cup of tea personally, Trill Will. Easy said being small should benefit Nolan because of his speed and pad level. It's usually worse for run defense, but he's surprisingly a good run defender. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, his problem is pass rush technique. Yeah, that's the thing that we heard. They were talking about they were talking. Lane Johnson was saying, it was like on Chris Johnson's show or whoever show it was, where he was talking about like, oh, Nolan Smith has progressed. He's his toolbox has expanded and his pass rush ability. Man, I wish we saw more of that, man. I didn't necessarily see too much of that. I wish we saw more of it, guys. Maybe we'll see it in season. I'm not trying to write this guy off yet easy. I think it's too early to write him off, but I would be lying if I said I didn't have legitimate concerns about him. I'm not ready to give up on a player yet. I mean, the guy hasn't even touched the field yet for his second year. Like, give him a chance to touch the field first. But yeah, man. Yeah. Donnie said John McMullen will remind you you're in debt at your wedding. Yeah, I don't know. I had one back in 2019, guys. It's pretty expensive, to be fair. Just hope it's a smartest man on the short bus situation with Dean, if you catch my drift. DJ said, what do you think this team's biggest weakness is? Let me think about that for a second. Hang on. I think they're pretty good at wide receiver. You can make an argument about running back, but give me a second. I'll explain that comment. Obviously, Saquon's not the problem. Depth at running back and tight end concern me a little bit because we're only going too deep and we're like really deep on the practice squad at tight end. And, for me, I think while you got a guy like Will Shipley, who I think could definitely play that Kenneth Gainwell role well, and I think Kenneth Gainwell over time has become a much better pass pro back. I still think if Saquon goes down, not only are you losing something in terms of the run ability, you're losing something in terms of pass protection too. And I don't know that we have a clear guy on the roster that gives you, even trying to put it together between Kenneth Gainwell and Will Shipley, and then having a third, I just don't think they have that other guy to kind of put it all together, the pieces together. If they lose Saquon, you're not going to be as good no matter what. I mean, you lose players like Saquon, you're taking a dip, but you get my point there. I do think that the depth there could be quite challenging, even though I like Will Shipley and I think he's going to be a decent player in the league. Tight end, yeah, man, you're one injury away. If you don't have a call up during game day, you're literally one injury away from not being able to run 12 personnel unless you bring an offensive lineman in. I mean, you can have an offensive lineman report as being eligible. You got guys like Jack Driscoll that they could potentially call up. I think they are calling up Nick Gates this game, so I guess they could use like a Nick Gates. They could use different people in that role from the offensive line. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things here I don't love the depth about. At edge rusher, DJ, I don't know that it's a weakness yet, but I do think it's a wait and see. I don't know that we're as solidified as we've been in previous years at the edge position, to be honest. We'll see. I think it's one of those ones to where could be much ado about nothing, and we're overhyping a fear that's not there. But it also could be something I could see the Eagles saying at the trade deadline is, hey, we're competitive. We got a shot at this thing, and we got to get another guy in here who can get to the quarterback. So, I mean, that's something I want to watch. I don't want to judge it too harshly yet, but it is something that I do want to watch as the season goes on. Is like, are we effective at getting to the quarterback, or is that something that's going to be hashed out later on? I would argue right now the depth at safety is quite problematic, but that'll be resolved once Sidney Brown comes back. I think your depth gets a little better, but I definitely think right now we would have a little bit of a depth issue if something happened. Cornelius says, "Hey, Gates, do you think Dean is better than Devin White?" That's tough, Cornelius, because I'm not there at practice to judge it, and I didn't really have tape on Devin. I didn't have that much tape on Devin White from the preseason. I mean, one of the few snaps I saw Devin White even play in the preseason, it was when they worked up to him on the second level. And to be fair about this, Cornelius, this was not Devin White's fault. This was definitely Jordan Davis getting removed from the play, but they doubled to Jordan Davis. They were running something that's called, we used to call, when I coach ball, we called it essentially power sync. So basically they pulled backside on the guard and came through the play side, gap with one of their guards. And then they doubled to that outside player there, which was Jordan Davis, was in a 3 technique. And they removed Jordan Davis out of that gap. And then, Zach Bond did a great job meeting the sync guard, meeting him through the hole and blowing that play up. Him and Avante had really tough angles to make a tackle in the backfield, but there was a small opportunity there for both of those guys. Both of them missed that tackle though. And then one of the guys who was working on a double team then worked his way up to the second level and absolutely depleted Devin White, which led to like a huge run there. So, I mean, like that, that's like one of the only like a handful of snaps I even have to judge him on. So like, it's kind of difficult to do that. I think both guys had a lot to prove coming in here, and there's just not a lot of tape. I thought Dean played really well in the preseason. I thought, from some of the things we heard from camp, I mean, he definitely looked towards the end of camp as if he was getting it. Won't know until there's real tape, though, Cornelius. I need to see more than 3 snaps, and I need a couple of games accumulated to really make a determination like that. But I think both guys had quite a bit to prove. Applebee's. That's awful. Mr. Sandman, what's up, buddy? He said, I knew Dean would master the playbook before all of the other linebackers. He's a true student of the game. White is a great athlete, but he's probably not as diligent of a study guy. Yeah, that's the things that like it's hard to say, right, Mr. Sandman, because we're just not there. I mean, I will say that most of the reports I have heard about Dean is that is an accurate detail. It's an accurate account of what I've heard about Dean, as well as that it's not a desire to learn is not the issue with Nakobe Dean. Like, he definitely has a desire to learn things. I don't know, I've heard some reports coming out about Devin White as well. I'm just not there personally to judge it. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough to judge it from the sidelines. What's up, Paul? How you doing, buddy? He says, I don't think Devin White's ego is going to let him be a happy backup. Your thoughts? I don't think that's going to be the issue, right? I mean, this is a different team. We didn't draft him in terms of being like the top half of the NFL draft, top 16 pick, top 10 pick, really. We didn't, he's not our selection in that way. So, I mean, him coming in here and having a role probably comes down, Paul, to the per snap basis of what his role would be and, what that would lead to. I also think that, in my opinion, Paul, if they're not winning games and he's not getting a larger role, I think you're right that I think any legitimate player's ego would get to them in that situation. But I think if you're winning games and you have a very clear defined role and you're being effective in your role, I think it's easier to keep things copacetic. Does that make sense, Paul? You get what I'm saying? I think it's going to come down to a little bit to the results of the defense, defining exactly, like I said, Paul, I can see an avenue towards a role where it would make some sense that Devin White would still have a spot on this team, would still have a role in this team. But at the same time, like I'm having a difficult time defining what that would be on a per snap basis, like percentage of snaps. I don't know. That would be tough, man. T Grant, I agree with that, sir. Van Sumeren has looked fantastic on all the 22. Yeah, he's looked good, even going back to what he did last year, at the end of last year. I actually have a breakdown on him from earlier during the offseason where I was saying, like, man, I guarantee I said he's a lock to make this roster. This guy's going to definitely make the roster because I knew just how good he was as a special teamer, but. Yeah, I mean, this dude's athletic, man. Some over pursuits, but he's the most explosive athlete on their team and looks night and day from last year. Yeah, even one of the plays I saw some people say the over pursued. He didn't really over pursued. He got tackled. Like it was clearly a flag. Clearly should have been a flag thrown on that. You can't tackle a player down. Yeah, he's athletic, man. The dude's got it, bro. He's got that X factor, man. What's up? I'm awake. How you doing, buddy? Donnie said, nice. Cameron said, I'm so glad Quignon switched to number 27. That number 30 was fugly, bruh. Ain't no way I was touching that jersey in the shop. Mr. Sandman, that's funny. He said, yo, my coworker asked me if I could cover his shift Friday night. He probably wants to go watch the game too. Nope. That's funny, man. I think I'm going to, when I jump off of here tomorrow, I'm going to go and I'm going to do like a little mini shift myself, but I'm going to make sure I get back in time to cook some wings and stuff and get ready for the game. Yeah, man. Yeah. I think I'd be doing the same thing, Mr. Salmon. I'd be like, hey, man, any other day I got you. It's not going to be Friday. Easy said, keep in mind, both Reddick and Huff exploded in their 4th year. Reddick was considered a bust until then. Nolan could also be a late bloomer. I mean, to be fair, Reddick came on he came on a year earlier than that. He came on like a 3rd year, I think, with Arizona when they finally made that switch for him to be overhanged. And the minute they overhanged him, he played really, really well. And Hassan's done it through 3 teams. I don't think the issue is going to be Bryce Huff getting sacks. I think he's more than capable of getting sacks. I think there was a clutch. There was a clutchness to what Hassan Reddick was doing that, no, you got a point. It was his 4th year in, man. You got a point there, man. I'm looking at the numbers right now, Easy. You're right. It was his 4th year in when he got to 12.5 sacks with Arizona. But there was a clutchness to what he did. Easy. There was, a clutchness to what Hassan did. And I don't know, it's hard to judge if Bryce is that guy. I mean, we don't know if Bryce is that guy yet. He could be, he might not be the guy in terms of the clutch moments, but boy, Hassan was clutch. He was just so clutch when he got that pass rush home. Some of that will be on Vic, though, to be fair, Easy. I mean, Vic setting Bryce Huff up to have success in those clutch moments, and it's part of the equation, right? Says, after Slay retires, I would hate to lose the services of Isaiah Rodgers. Could you see him moving to safety a la Maddox? I don't know, Ian. I don't really know his background. I will say that Maddox in particular, because he's played so much nickel corner in his career, I think he understands those calls pretty well. And I think he understands like the ball playing in front of him, things playing in front of him, to be quite honest. But you could make an argument that Isaiah Rodgers has all the movement skills, all the movement ability to essentially be an effective free, backup free safety. Sure. You could play him down in the slot. You could play him outside if you needed to. Back in the day, we used to play Rodney McLeod on occasion. He would play outside and cover guys. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Who will get the most snaps on the D line in nickel packages? Give me a second to think about that one, Mr. Salmon. I assume we're talking mostly that right defensive tackle spot. I don't know. I have the answer for that. I think they're going to initially give Jordan Davis a look there and give him a chance to be the main guy. Still going to be a rotation there, I think, no matter what. Boy, that's a good question, Mr. Salmon. I think the other question is are they going to take a guy like, Josh Sweat or Brandon Graham? Are they going to put their hands in the dirt as a 3-man line and then overhang Bryce Huff or somebody, Nolan Smith, and use them as an overhang and rush? Are they going to use linebackers or, what are they going to do on those third downs? That's an excellent question, man. I think early Jordan Davis will be the right defensive tackle to get some snaps, the majority of them. I do think there'll still be a rotation there. But I think that if Jordan Davis is not being effective, I think you'll quickly see that start rolling into guys like Milton Williams and, Moro Ojamo and Thomas Booker. I think all those dudes will start getting their opportunities. Ian said he wants to see.
You have an app named Opportunities. You can search for it in the App Store.
Okay, appreciate that. That's weird. He's trying to tell me I don't have an app named Opportunities. Didn't think I did. Ian said I want to see Dean and White on the field together. I've been watching film breakdowns on the linebackers, and Dean and White play pretty similar. White is faster, but Dean's diagnosis really well. Sorry, Drew. Van Sumeren is fast. He's the fastest of them all. Yeah, Van Sumeren is really quick, man. Mr. said, great Eagle show. Gate, we appreciate you. Hey, man, I appreciate you guys. Bond does it all pretty well, but doesn't excel at anything in particular. According to the breakdowns I saw, I thought Bond did it again. Drew, I'm judging a single snap, and there lies the problem. I thought Bond did a really good job on that play where, like I said, where I was talking about, where they ran essentially, power sync, and they take Jordan Davis out of the play. They're pulling through a guard right through that gap. And then Bond, I thought, absolutely blew that play up. I thought Bond did his job on that play. I thought he was pretty physical at the point of attack there. Trey said, I'm mad at LB for not sticking by Nakobe, but he's still my guy. I got to get up with them. I got to get up with him and Mike, man. It's been a while since LB, Mike, and I talked. I'll see what they're doing. We'll have to do a pregame show coming up pretty soon, either tomorrow or maybe next week or something. We'll have to do a pregame show. Watching Kobe's play really well. Y'all going to be surprised, not me. The issue with Reddick and Nolan Smith comparison is Reddick was playing out of position. Easy, easy. My bad, man. Said, did they play him out of position because he wasn't good there yet, or because of coaching malpractice? Yeah, easy. It's a great question. I don't know that from the outside. I have the honest to God, opinion that's 1,000% right there. But from my vantage point, it looked like more malpractice than anything. It looked like a coaching malpractice to me in terms of the way they were utilizing Hassan Reddick early on in his career, because he was asking them to play down there and be able to pass rush. Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. I'm confused. I thought Jordan Davis plays nose tackle. He does, but they're talking about in nickel, third down, like nickel situations to where you're going to that 4-man front. So Vic plays it a couple of different ways, Drew. So one way that he will play it is he will put 3 guys to put their hands in the dirt. So you'll have a guy that's going to play like a 2-eye. And beside that 2-eye, you'll have a guy with his hands in the dirt that's like a 5 technique. And then on the opposite side, you'll have a 3 technique. And then normally what you'll get outside of that 3 technique is a guy who's going to be overhanged. So he'll be standing up like in the jack linebacker role. So that's one way. And it's kind of it's close to a traditional 30 front, 3-4 or a nickel 3-3-5 for them. The second way he does it is it's a 4-man front. When I say 4-man front, believe me, there's some subjectivity to some of this stuff, guys. What I mean is there's 4 linemen. You got a guy playing a 2-eye. So hand in the dirt is a 2-eye. You got a guy with his hands in the dirt playing a 3 technique. And then you have 2 guys overhanging on the edges. Those are the 2 ways I see him play mostly out of nickel. I was looking to see if he played any of the mint defense that we see at Georgia. I did not find it on his film. I am hopeful, since we have so many dudes from Georgia, and it is not a big leap to go from what Vic has played traditionally over to the mint front. The mint front is a way that they play out there in Georgia, and this is something they started doing in Alabama, but moved it over to Georgia. Something like that. I mean, I would love to see if there's an evolution there, Drew, but I don't know. Until I see it play out, I can't really. It's all speculation until it plays out, unfortunately, in terms of like the mint front and stuff like that. Mr. Salmon said, where do you rank Fangio among defensive coordinators in the NFL? It's a great question, honestly, Mr. Salmon. I definitely think he's a top 5 guy. I don't know if I got to really think about who's in the league, because I'm a pretty big fan of Todd Bowles, to be quite honest. I really like Todd Bowles a lot. I think Todd Bowles deserves to be up there pretty highly. Spagnuolo deserves some credit. Steve Spagnuolo does. He's won multiple Super Bowls with separate organizations. The problem I have with Steve Spagnuolo is that his time in Kansas City, it's like, dude, you got Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes. Like a lot of guys with Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and Kelsey on the offense, a lot of dudes could win some Super Bowls that way, man. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I would put him quite that high. I got a lot of respect for Jim Schwartz, Mr. Salmon. I know some people don't. I still think Jim Schwartz is one of the top coordinators in this league. I know he ticked this off here in Philadelphia. It's because I think Jim Schwartz was too willing for too long to play with subpar talent defensively. It didn't speak up loud enough about certain positions like linebacker and be like, hey, man, the 1 year you gave me something to work with on linebacker, we went to the Super Bowl. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think Schwartz I'd put up there. I think Schwartz, he deserves some credit. I know I'm favoring towards some of the veteran guys. I get it a little bit. He's not a coordinator anymore, though. That's the thing in terms of some of the guys I'm thinking here. I would say Buffalo's head coach. I do think that as Sean McDermott as an actual coordinator, I think Sean McDermott as a coordinator is one of the better defensive minds in the league, but he's not a coordinator, so I don't know if he would count in this conversation. So I think I'd have to slide Vic up there pretty highly. Let me think. Zimmer, I think, could be in the conversation. I hate that he went to Dallas, guys. I don't like giving Dallas flowers, but I think Zimmer has a lot to prove. But I think when Zimmer is at his best, I think Zimmer's one of those guys that's quite good at this. I will say the one issue I have with Zimmer is that I don't know that Zimmer relates the best to players. I think he's had some struggles in his past with players, to be quite honest. I'm trying to think who else. Dan Quinn is a head coach, so it's really the Sean McDermott role there. I don't really think that you can give him credit for that. We should probably put a younger guy in here. That's the problem is like trying to figure out a younger player that we can put in. a younger coordinator, I should say, that we can put in. I'm trying to think through my mind to give us a fifth guy. We gotta clue at least one younger guy. I'm trying to look through the league, guys. Give me 1 second. See, yeah, I like Brian Flores, but he's not a young guy. Minnesota's defensive coordinator Brian Flores. I think he's a pretty good mind as well, defensive mind. Oh man, I'm trying to think. Who is a younger guy here? Aaron Glenn's a good one too. He's not a younger guy. Aaron Glenn's a good coordinator though. Brian Flores is a good coordinator. Neither one of them I would qualify as younger guys. Trying to think, guys. I'm trying to think. Give me a second to think of somebody who's a little younger, got some talent. I just, I don't want to retread like the Aaron Glenn's, the Floreses, the Spagnolas. Like it's just retreading the same guys out there again. I got a person in mind, but they haven't really coordinated a game yet. But I do think they're going to be one of the better coordinators in the league. If I'm being honest, it's a guy that I think that we missed the chance at hiring ourselves. But I think look at Tennessee and Denard Wilson this year. I would watch Denard Wilson. I wanted Denard hired here. I think Denard can build scheme. I think Denard is aggressive. I think he's coached behind some really creative dudes. I think he's been a part of their coaching staff. I think Denard's going to surprise some people out there in Tennessee, man. I think he's going to be good for them. I thought that he was the right hire even here in Philadelphia. I know that means we probably don't have Vic Fangio. We have Denard Wilson, but I like Denard Wilson. I'm not going to lie. I definitely think Denard Wilson is going to be one of those guys. I know that it's probably not fair to put him on this list because he hasn't coordinated a single game yet. So now I'm going too far the other direction. But I'm trying to think, who was a young man that was just coaching? See, that's the problem is a lot of these guys that get moved so fast if they're any good. Let me see. No, I'm not a big Nick Sorensen guy. Boy, I'm trying to think who is another decent defensive coordinator. Let's see. I'm trying to think, guys. I'm trying to give you a name here. I want to give you a younger name. I don't want to give you a rehash of an older coach. It's just that there's so much, tape around when we get older coaches. Like it makes it tough not to. And some of the guys I would have put out there, they have head coaching gigs now. So that's a little bit of a problem too. So that makes it kind of tough to like really give them anything, any kind of like any momentum there. Who's the kid, the dude in Pittsburgh? Because he had a pretty good year last year. I was going to say the dude from Baltimore, but I think he's a head coach now, right? Terrell Austin, he's not a young guy in terms of the league. He's a younger coordinator. It's only his second season as a D coordinator. He's a former secondary coach. Coaches the Steelers. He's a name. He's a good player or a good coach. Good player. He's a good coach. Like it's tough, man. It's really tough because it's tough, man. Because like there's some guys I really like that I think even the I think Al Harris, who coaches in Dallas, former Eagle. But, he coached in Dallas for a while. I think Al Harris is a guy that as time goes on, he's a name to watch. I think Al Harris is a riser. I think he's a guy that if you give it time, like he's going to be one of the top defensive coordinators in the league. Like right now, I still think he's just a D-backs coach. But if you give him an opportunity to like be, a coordinator and to call some plays, I think Al Harris has got the ability to do that. Trying to think, who did Washington hire? They hired a dude from that came over from Dallas. Washington Commanders, D coordinator. Because Joe Witt Jr. Joe Witt Jr. I don't know if he's going to be any good, guys, but I know he's highly thought of. Joe Witt Jr. is. He's coaching the Commanders now. He kind of followed the staff over. There's a couple of younger guys in the league that I think will be good. They haven't had a chance to really prove it yet. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of partial towards the vets that have been in the league for a while. I think there's a reason why you want those guys because you want a guy that's going to stick around, especially if you have instability offensively with the changing of the guards. You want a defensive guy that's going to be around for a while, I think. And I think that's probably why I favor some of those guys because I know the opportunity that a lot of those guys are going to get another crack at like a head coaching gig is probably pretty small. To be fair, I think some of them, it's a very small opportunity for them to get another crack at a coaching gig. Although to be fair, there have been a couple of guys who've gotten a couple of shots at head coaching that are defensive guys. Dan Quinn's getting his second opportunity as a head coach, as a defensive guy. But I think for the most part, you're safer with the D guys, defensive guys. Hey, Gates, you're not just top notch. Keep up the good work. Hey, man, appreciate that. Drew said, okay. Didn't hear. Then thanks. Hey, no problem. He won them the Super Bowl this year. Andy and Mahomes got carried by the defense. Love Schwartz was sad when it didn't work out. Wide 9. Yeah. How old is Brian Flores? I don't think he's that old in age, but he's been around the league for a while calling plays is what I mean. So Brian Flores is 43. He's only a couple years older than me, to be honest. Sure. He's only a couple years older than me, but he's been calling plays for a while between his time, with New England, Miami now there. So I wouldn't call him like a startup, but I do think Brian Flores, like I said, if I had to make a list of like 10, top 10 guys, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, there's a few of those guys that would be on that list for me. Steve Spagnuolo would be on that list if I'm going top 10 defensive coordinators in the league. Yeah, Denard Wilson definitely wanted him to stay. Jeff Ulbrich. Is Jeff calling plays? Let me see if Ulbrich is calling plays. Yeah, I believe he is calling plays. I don't know if Ulbrich or if Saleh is calling the plays there. Let me see if I can't find a quick search on it. Because the only issue I with Jeff Ulbrich, and you could be right that he could be the guy. We'll call plays on defense in 2021. Okay, so Saleh gave him play calling when he got there. I think the issue is it Saleh's defense? You know what I'm saying? Is he the person who's building the defense, Ian? But you can make an argument. I mean, especially if you're going top 10 guys, Ian, then yeah, you could definitely make the Jets they've got a quality defense. Denard is on Sirianni. Dude was obsessed with the Fangio guys. Yeah, Mr. Salmon, it's a fair point. I forgot about D'Amico Ryans, but he's a head coach as well. You know what I mean? Like there's some guys I would definitely say, or if we were just talking defensive minds and not necessarily as like the play callers and the coordinators, like, yeah, like there's a few other guys I would definitely put on that list just because, they're smart guys. They've been around the league for a long time. They know what they're doing. See, D'Amico Ryans. Is D'Amico Ryans calling plays? Whew. So yeah, D'Amico Ryans has ceded play calling duties to defensive coordinator Matt Burke. Matt Burke, no kidding. I didn't know that Matt Burke was his play caller. Do you guys get why I'm laughing? Who can tell me why that's funny? The Matt Burke line. Some of you should know this. Come on, guys. A famous coach wanted to make Matt Burke the defensive coordinator, guys. I don't know if you remember the story, but a certain guy got fired after he wanted to make Matt Burke the defensive coordinator and give him play calling responsibility for the Philadelphia Eagles. Matt Burke was the guy that they didn't like the Doug Peterson plan there. Yep, Dougie P, you got it, True Will. I didn't realize that Matt Burke was D'Amico Ryans' play caller. Hey, Gate City, do you believe this Vic Fangio scheme only works with really good linebackers? Like, do you think we have the personnel for this defense to thrive? Yes, I do think that we have the personnel for it to be successful. I guess it depends what you mean by thrive, to be honest about that. But I think you need to have adequate linebacker play. I don't think you need to be like top 5 or 6 in the league or anything like that. I do think you need to be in the top half of the league. Like you need to be hovering at least in the middle of the league, or I think you're in trouble. I think Fangio stuff is more so predicated on communication in the secondary. It's the communication in the secondary that can kill you in a Fangio scheme. It's why I love Vic Fangio. I think he's one of the greatest minds in the NFL in terms of defense. But I also think that Fangio's scheme, I'm not the biggest fan of it because I think it requires a lot of attention to detail, a lot of communication. There's just so much room for errors in that system. No way Belichick coaches defense again. But if Sirianni gets released and Belichick wants to be our head coach / defensive coordinator, Dougie P. Yeah, you got it, Trello. Exactly. The Texans. Yeah. I didn't realize that Matt Burke was the play caller for the Texans. That's interesting. It's interesting that D'Amico Ryans, who also has history here with the Eagles, it's interesting that D'Amico Ryans took Matt Burke and made him his defensive coordinator and play caller. That's it is what it is. I thought that was funny because our front office kind of came down on Doug for suggesting that Matt Burke could be a decent play caller on the defensive side of the ball, but it is what it is. It's one of those things where bygones be bygones, the past be the past. What can we do? You know what I mean? All right, guys, we've been going for a little over an hour. I got to jump off here, man. This baby got a head cold, and her breathing's a little right now, so I had to keep her home from preschool today. So I need to go check on her here in a second, make sure that I don't need to give her some more saline drops and suction her nose because babies they can't really talk. So a particular defensive coach you think would have really worked for our team? Yeah, I wanted Denard Wilson here personally. I was a big Denard Wilson fan last year when they were going through the coaching process. Do you think I can be an Eagles tight end? I'm 5'8", 140. I run a 6'5", 840 with a 15-inch vertical jump. I'm also young at 49. Do I have any upside? Hey, you can ask him to give you a workout and give you a chance on the practice squad. See, if Dean stays the starter, is there any role for White on this team? Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, C. Johnson. I think there could potentially still be a role here. I think defining the role in terms of a snap percentage is the tough thing. We talked about earlier about replacement blitzes and the fact that you can use Zach Bond like a Van Ginkel. He can be overhanged. So you can use Nakobe Dean. You can use Devin White. You can use Zach Bond and Nolan Smith. You can use some of these guys in very unique ways, and that could lead to an avenue towards some type of role on the football team. It's just hard to define what that would be on a per snap basis per game. It's we're all kind of in the air, I'm not sure what that would look like. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all. I'm about to jump off of here. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Game day tomorrow, guys. Game day tomorrow. It's going to be a weird one. Has Dean gotten any better in coverage because he was lost last year? Ben, hard to say, man. Until we're in season and we got actual tape to judge. I mean, right now it's vanilla offense and defense that teams are playing. So judging the preseason, I think it'd be a little bit of fool's gold with that, man. Yeah, appreciate it, Ian. Yeah, gave me a scare last night, definitely, man. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I'll see y'all tomorrow, guys. Peace.